Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to do a sort of surprise video and a very random video, for sure. I am, I have been watching stuff in the background as I've been recovering from various illnesses in January, and I also watch it in the background while I work, while I wait for things to upload, etc., etc. And one of the things that I've been watching recently, I've really only been watching like two things for fun. I've been watching a YouTube show, and I've been watching Leave It to Beaver on Tubi. And I discovered that Leave It to Beaver was on Tubi when I had salmonella. And I was like, I need something good to watch. And of course, Tubi has a bunch of free stuff, a lot of stuff that you can watch. And so I was really excited because I really miss when Netflix is not only trash now in regards to their pricing, the terrible original content, the canceling of shows so that they don't overstay their welcome, like Cobra Kai. The thing that really bothers me about Cobra Kai being canceled is that I saw that next year that the Karate Kid reboot was supposed to come out. And so to me, I don't think that they're going to admit this, but I think that they were forced to end the show because they're doing that reboot and they didn't want the reboot to compete with the show. Otherwise, why would you end that show? Like, for the people saying that, like, the kids are all grown up, they're all going to graduate from high school, and, they're adults now. Well, so what? So what? Like, the whole start of the show, the whole pull of the show was that you had Johnny and Daniel, and they're out of high school and they're grown up just doing whatever they're doing. That's the whole draw to the show. So I totally don't buy that it's because the kids are all grown up. It's like, what a lame excuse is that? I mean, I could understand that if it was for something like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which I still would like to see, like a conclusion movie to the series with that really amazing cast that they got. I mean, I think that the cast for Diary of a Wimpy Kid, the movies, I think it's probably one of the best adaptation casts that they've ever done. But that's beside the point. How did I even get... I went from one thing to another, but another thing that Netflix does is they remove a ton of selection. And I've noticed that, like, there's hardly anything on there to watch. And so I don't even watch things on Netflix anymore. Like, literally the only reason we have Netflix is because of someone else who watches stuff on it. Like, that's the only reason. It's that bad. Netflix used to have Leave It to Beaver, Buffy, King of the Hill, Being Human, Bates Motel, what was that other? Californication, Andy Griffith's Show, and they have taken all those... The Office. All those shows taken off over the course of some years. And it's like, if I want to get a streaming service, I want to get something where I can actually have stuff to watch. Like, I really would just like to get physical stuff now. Again, like, I'm really kind of sick of the digital bullshit that they pull, where, like, oh, you can't watch this movie because it's currently unavailable and all that kind of shit. And so I was really happy to see that at least Tubi, out of all things, Tubi has Leave It to Beaver, and I can't help but really like watching the show. There's a mix of a little seriousness and a lot of comedy, And I don't really agree with people who say that the show is bad because it's like, oh, this is the perfect family and every family should be like this. Like, I don't see that at all. I literally don't see that. Like, I just see that this is just a regular family, like a template almost, and they're using a template of a family to tell stories that will have morals at the end that might teach you something useful or might not. You know, there were some questionable lessons in this season. And for some reason, I just watched the whole season 3. I think season 3 is probably the best or one of the better seasons of the series. You know, season 2, oh, it has a lot of bad-looking episodes, but I'll have to see, because now I want to watch the whole series. And even though I'm supposed to be doing American Horror Story, just once I start watching something like this, I just want to get through it, and then I might not be in the mood to watch it anymore. So I'll just go through it now. So I apologize if this seems random and funny. And instead of really talking about the season as a whole, I can't really do that very well because it's so large. It's a 40 episodes for each season. So I'm just going to go through each episode how I rank them. The worst one was Wally and Alma. So this one, I can't even remember what happened in this one, honestly. Like, this was one episode where I completely zoned out. I had no idea what was going on. You know, I really like the actress who plays Alma. I used to like her a lot as a kid. And I was really surprised that she was in so many episodes, because when I was a kid, I just thought that she was in that one, you know, the famous one from the first season, which is probably one of the more iconic episodes of the show. But no, she's in quite a few episodes, just even in the background. And I think she's a really good character. And I really wish that out of all the things in this show, I think one of my biggest complaints right off the bat is that they didn't really make the side characters full-on characters for the most part. Like, you had characters who got a lot of development, like Larry and Eddie, but then you had characters like Alma, or maybe Mr. Rutherford, and they didn't get really any development at all. And I think that was a big wasted opportunity, especially since, you know, all those actors are dead, and it would have been nicer to see more of them. They were so good. Well, not all of them. Like, Alma isn't probably dead, but I mean, like, Mr. Rutherford and people like that, you know, the adult characters. So Wally and Alma, I don't even know. I don't even know what happened. And then Beaver the model. The only thing really funny about this episode is that Beaver is getting scammed by this fake modeling company. They just want his money, and they tricked him and everything into signing something, I don't know. But the only funny thing is that he goes to a lawyer, a lawyer's office, because he knows that he's the friend of his dad. And I thought that was a really funny idea, but it ended up being kind of queer. Like it was really like, some of the things that happen on this show, I turn my head to the side and I just make like this, you know, like this really face, because it's like, I just can't believe what I'm seeing. The lawyer kind of like guilt trips Beaver, and he gets mad at him, and the way that he acts. I mean, keep in mind, he's only met Beaver like once or so at like a Christmas party, and he's treating Beaver like he's his father or something. And he even makes him give him like all of his change in his pocket so that he can write a nasty letter to the fake company. So I thought that was kind of queer. I mean, he robbed this little kid, basically. I mean, that was kind of unnecessary. Like, I mean, I guess I get the talking to, the way that he was talking to him, but the whole thing with like, I'm gonna take all your change that you have in your pocket, young man. It's like, this is kind of weird. Next up is Wally's play. This episode was very disappointing. It had a great message in it, which I think a lot of the actors nowadays who are starting out, I think that they could greatly benefit from watching this episode, because it's all about how Wally has been cast as the dance hall girl in the school play, and he doesn't want to do it, of course, because he'll have to dress up in a dress, and he doesn't want to be embarrassed. And so then he manipulates things to where Eddie wants to be in the play instead, and then Eddie convinces the Duke, which is another kind of small character who never really got any sort of highlight, even though he was very funny and one of the better like side characters that they came up with. And then Eddie gets the part instead, and then eventually we find out that it actually backfired, and Eddie received a lot of popular attention, and he got applauded by the whole school, and the girls didn't care, and like it was a big misfire for Wally to not want to be in the play. And I thought that was a really good lesson, because a lot of the times nowadays you see these actors and they pretend like they're better than roles, and they pretend like they're better than projects, and like, oh, I'm not going to be doing that. And it's like, you're really like, you're hurting yourself, like, by not doing this and not being in this movie or this part. And I really thought that it was a great message that it sent. And we do get to see Wally in a dress for a couple of seconds. That's part of like the comedy of the episode is, oh look, Wally's in a dress. But the most disappointing thing is that we never get to see Eddie in the play with the dress on. I really think that it could have served well if we had seen that. Like, you didn't even have to see like the whole play or the audience, because maybe they just couldn't get enough people or something. All you had to do was just show like part of a set and show Eddie in the dress and show a little tiny scene, and you have the applause sound effects in the background, and that's it. So, good message, but very disappointing that we didn't get to see Eddie in the dress. That was part of like the comedic draw to the episode was it's going to be really funny when Eddie walks out in a dress, and you don't get to see it. Next up is Beaver Takes a Walk. This is a very disappointing episode. So the premise is amazing, where Ward, the father, says that he used to walk to school 20 miles a day, and so Beaver should be able to too. And because he's basically really lazy, and he doesn't want to drive Beaver to school. And Beaver makes a bet with kids at school after getting a pedometer. He makes a bet that he can walk 20 miles in one day. And of course, this seems like a pretty hard task for a kid, or for anyone. Like, unless you're like in shape and you like to walk and everything, it seems pretty difficult. Well, there really isn't very much of an attempt for Beaver to walk around for those 20 miles. Like, when I was watching the episode, I was expecting that we get all these funny schemes and scams where, like, oh, maybe he would tie the pedometer to a bicycle and he ride around on the bicycle or something, like some sort of like just creative stuff to happen, but he really didn't do anything. Like he walked around a little bit with his friend and then he went home. That's it. That's all the walking that he did. And basically the whole episode should have been called Ward Tells a Tall Tale, because the whole point of the episode is that Ward exaggerated and he shouldn't be exaggerating so much with a kid. So then I think he buys Beaver something to say sorry. I don't know. It's a fucking stupid episode, but it could have been a really good one. Next up is Beaver's library card. This episode is just really plain Jane. You know exactly what's going to happen. Beaver borrows a book. He loses the book. He doesn't want to tell anyone. He tells someone. He gets in trouble. The end. Very weak. Wally's election. This is one that I think a lot of people really like. I guess. I mean, I don't hate it. It's just that there's so many other great episodes. It's basically where Wally gets entered into the class president position along with other kids, and it turns him into a jerk, and it makes him kind of become a briber and do all these dirty tricks. I guess I'm kind of spoiled because I've seen this story before done better. Jimmy Neutron in particular has a really fantastic episode where it's all about the same type of thing, and it is just so much better than this. So this is just kind of Next up is Ward's baseball. This was one in particular that, kind of might get on your nerves, because first off, Beaver does a stupid thing as usual because Larry tells him to, and they take a baseball that has been autographed by a bunch of different baseball players, and they play with it, and then they wreck it and they tear it open or something. And that's already bad enough. I definitely think Beaver should have been punished. And then, of course, there is this funny bit where they fake signatures on a new baseball. And so Ward brings over Mr. Rutherford, and he's like, oh, this is fake because all these names are mixed up, and it's really, really funny, that part. But then what's not funny is that Ward, he definitely is some sort of a really obsessed weirdo baseball fanatic, because he freaks out and he says, Beaver, you're going to be in your room for a whole week. You're going to eat dinner up in your room. You're going to just be up there all day after you go to school. And I thought, you know what? What he did was really bad. But he didn't even fully wreck the baseball. When you see the baseball, he just made it to where a part tore open, and you could basically glue it together again, and it would be fine, pretty much. You just have to explain to people that it wore out. It was going to wear out and tear apart anyway. But yeah, he did do something pretty bad. But the weird part is that you can tell that this was too much of a punishment, and you could tell that he probably should have gone back on it a little bit. Maybe, Beaver, you can eat dinner with us. You don't have to eat dinner in your room, or something like that, But instead, Ward is about to go upstairs and say sorry to Beaver and take it back. And then Wally comes over, and Wally says, oh, actually, I don't think it would be a good idea to take back any of your punishment, because that would show that you're a weak father or something. And it's like, what? Like, I don't think that's true at all. Like, that's like, see, that felt like something that a father would write. Like, that did not feel like something that Wally would actually think. Wally, a teenage boy, he would be advocating for his brother, and he was up until that point. So I really thought that was stupid, because it's like, oh, a father can't ever admit when he's wrong, apparently. Like, even when it comes to, like, the punishment department, Ward can't do that, because that's, ooh. Next up is Mother's Day composition. This one's pretty funny, but it's just kind of weak. It's all about how Beaver, he has a really boring mom. And, I remember Safi watching this episode, and Safi was like, why don't you give him more? Like, June could see that her son, he had to write a paper about her, and she could see that he was struggling because she hardly did anything, I guess. Like, she basically didn't do anything until she married Ward, which is fine. But still, it was like she was purposefully, like, leaving stuff out and just like, I'm going to give him the bare minimum. And so there's this really funny part, and I mean, it is probably one of the funniest parts of the season, where Beaver, he's downstairs in a bathrobe, and he's got his cookies and milk, and he sees that there's this woman on TV being interviewed, and he thinks like, ooh, I got a really good idea. I'm just going to copy this interview and say that my mom did all these things. And it was really funny, the way that Beaver acted. I got to admit, like, I really think that the actor playing Beaver, Jerry, I think that he is a really good actor, and that this scene is a prime example, because it's all in the face. You can see, like, this the inner workings of him, and the thinking like, ooh, I'm gonna actually, ooh, I know what I'm gonna do. And another, I just remembered, there's this hilarious part where the teacher says, the teacher tells this other kid to read his composition, and he does, and Beaver gets so embarrassed, he takes his paper and he just crumples it up into a ball without even hesitating, and he's just like, he's looking at the teacher while he's doing it, and that was really, really funny. And then I think he even, like, just throws it on the floor or something. Like, that was really okay. I should have put that one higher, probably. Damn it. It was pretty hard to rank these 40 episodes, I gotta admit. The last day of school. This was another weak one. I guess I will say it was smart. That's the one thing. Basically what happens in this is that June orders leggings she orders a slip, and she orders handkerchiefs to be the gift for Beaver's teacher, because it's the last day of school before the summer. And the packages get switched up, and the teacher gets sent the slip. And what I really loved about this episode was Beaver. Beaver in this episode is so smart, and he is so, like, he makes all the right decisions in this episode. Like, normally in these episodes, you're kind of face palming yourself, because it's like, God, Beaver, stop, just do that. But then he does something stupid. in this episode, he makes all the good decisions, and it really makes you happy for once that he's doing what's right. And then Tire Trouble. This one's okay. Basically, the boys think about ordering chinchillas so that they can sell them in the garage. So they start building cages, but then they never follow through with it. And Ward keeps on telling them to clean it up, clean it up, clean it up. And eventually they figure out that there's a nail inside Ward's tire because he was trying to park his car in the garage. And oh shit. And there's this whole fantastic sequence where these boys, Wally and Beaver, they go to a lot of trouble just so that their dad doesn't figure out the truth. And they take out the spare tire, they put that tire on the car, and then they take the car with the tire with the nail in it, and they roll it all around town to get it fixed. Then they take that back, put that back on the car, and then they clean up the garage too, I believe. And it's like, wow, they really worked in this episode. And I really love the whole sequence where they're rolling the tire around, what's it called? Mayfield? Yeah, Mayfield. I really love that sequence. That's something that I always remembered from being a kid, is watching them roll the tire around. Another thing I really liked about the episode was seeing Mr. Rutherford and Ward at work together. I really wish that we could have gotten to see more of that as well. And then School Bus, that's the next one. Ugh. This episode, and God, I still have quite a few to talk about. I'm going to try to go faster. It's just, I want to make sure that I say what I want to say about each one. This one's okay. So Beaver gets in trouble on the bus, and because this kid hit him, and so he hit the kid back. What's really bad about this episode, though, is that's never really vindicated. Like, the kid who hit Beaver, he doesn't even get in trouble. Beaver's the one who gets in trouble. And I'm sorry, but that never ever gets dealt with. Like, they go out of their way to make Beaver out to be like a bad boy for hitting that kid on the bus. And I guess he just hit him one time. And he gets suspended from the bus. And so then he writes a letter to the bus driver, and I thought that was funny because Wally helps him. But the best part of the episode is when Judy, the class bitch, she comes over. And by the way, there is a really interesting issue with her to talk about in terms of the actress. And I can't remember if this is her last season, but if it's not, then I will talk about it in the next episode. But very interesting of why she left the show, which I never knew. Like, as a kid, I just assumed these dipshit writers don't want to use her character because they have a problem with using all these characters that they have like a whole sandbox, and they don't even take advantage. But Judy comes over, and apparently she got kicked off the bus too. And so she basically comes over and pretends that she's nice to Beaver in exchange for a copy of the note to send to the driver too. I thought that was a genius sequence, because I think it's the only time in the series that Judy is ever nice to Beaver. And I just couldn't help but, like, it was like the Twilight Zone, because she is always a huge bitch in the show. Next up, Beaver takes a bath. This is where Wally has to take care of Beaver one night, and he leaves the water running in the bath for some reason. It's just, this is another one that should have been lower. I really can't remember very much about it at all. Beaver's team, this is one where the premise is very simple, but I think that it was a good premise. It just should have been done better in terms of execution. So, the premise is that Beaver's on a football team, and he gives up the winning play to this girl that he likes, and then she gives up the winning play to the opposite team. I really didn't like this episode because it just seemed like, I don't know, like it was so simple in terms of the actual script. Like, it wasn't very exciting. It was pretty predictable, and the ending was kind of like the ending did not offer very much. Like, it was so kind of, ugh. And this is the last episode of the season, too, so it's a pretty weak finale. It could have been a lot better. Another thing that I found was really weird was that I think that when they shot the football scene, I think that they had trouble because I think that the whole sequence was dubbed, because whenever Ward talks, it just does not sound like his voice at all. And so it really feels like they had to come back and quickly dub all the lines over. So I just feel like the whole episode was kind of a miss. It was a huge, mediocre episode compared to what it could have been. I mean, I do think that the movie that they made in the early 2000s, they did do the football part better than this in this show. And then Beaver's Fortune, I thought that this was kind of good. I mean, it's another really simple one where Beaver gets a fortune that tells him that he's going to have good luck. And so then he tells the school bully that he wants to fight him. And Larry gets him into doing a fight, and then he shows up, and the bully never shows up. And it's basically, he called him out on his BS. But I don't know, like, it just, it's really kind of weak. It's really not very, that's pretty much it. I guess the only thing is that Larry tried to get him into the fight. Like, Larry was the one who came up with it. And then at the end of the episode, Larry finally goes up to the bully himself, and he does get punched. I thought that was kind of funny. Beaver and Ivanhoe, this one's okay. It's basically Beaver turns into an SJW, a white knight, and he walks around town stopping things that happen, and there's this one part where he's like, "Hey, why are you hitting a woman?" And it turns out that that's this kid's sister, and that they were just play fighting. And it was there was some stuff like that was funny. But the reason why I didn't like the episode was that it got treated so seriously. Like, this was a very light premise. It was a very goofy one. And instead, the way that they treat it is like, ooh. You know, like, they really treat it like he's terrible. And, you know, I don't know. It's just, it's not very good. Beaver and Violet. Now, this one, it's okay. Beaver and Violet, Rutherford, they all go out together, the two families, the Cleavers and the Rutherfords, and they trick Violet into kissing Beaver, and then they take a picture of it, and they put it on the cover of Ward's Business's magazine. And I thought that that was kind of interesting because it did seem kind of like weird. Like, it seemed like a really strange choice to make, that for like your business you have this picture, for the newsletter magazine, that you have this picture of the boy being kissed by the girl, and he's freaking out, and I don't know, it seems like a personal picture or something. Like, I don't know. What I really liked about it, though, was that Beaver and Violet, they have some really good chemistry together as actors. And I really liked at the end of the episode where you find out that Violet did not like the picture either. And that they both really like each other in reality. He's not so much afraid of girls anymore. He's just afraid of the embarrassment, and she is too. So that was a okay episode. The next one is Pet Fair. This is one where Beaver gets himself into a lot of trouble, and there's a very easy fix. And as soon as he was talking to the guy who owned the parrot, I was like, oh, well, why don't you just do that? But no, Beaver couldn't think of that, so they crafted an episode around it. What happens is the class has a pet fair. Beaver doesn't have a pet because he's a little shithead, and he makes up that he has this talking parrot that can speak 200 languages or something. I don't know, something really crazy. And he has to follow through on that promise, or else he thinks he'll be embarrassed. So he actually finds an impressive parrot that is in the shop, but it costs $200 to buy. And as soon as he found that out, I was like, well, you're a kid. This is an adult. Why doesn't the adult just say, like, why do you want to buy this? Like, are you sure you want to buy it? And, he could have just said, no, I just need it for this one day in class. And then he could have rented it. And that was as soon. I was like, why don't you just rent the parrot? Like, it's simple fix. So, and of course, that's what ends up happening. And then they kind of treat it like, oh, well, Ward can't always be helping Beaver fulfill his promises. And it's like, I don't know, like with this one, like he doesn't have a pet, so like, is it really bad for them to rent the pet out for him to take to school? I mean, I don't really think it's that bad at all for them to do that. Next up is Baby Picture. You guys already know what this is about, probably. June sends in a naked baby picture of Beaver to school, and Beaver tries to conceal it and not let anyone see it. There's two things I liked about this episode. Number one thing I didn't like was that they were like, oh, well, we can't tell June that you don't like the picture and that you don't want it to be seen in school, because she's going to cry and she's going to get offended. And I thought, like, is June really that weak that she can't handle, like, that a 10-year-old kid doesn't want to be seen naked in school in front of his other classmates? Like, is that really a hard concept to understand? Like, I don't think so. But the thing that I really liked was that when Beaver shows the picture to his father, and when he explains the situation to him, there's this really feel-good moment where Ward takes a pair of scissors and he cuts up the picture so that, you don't see, like, his full naked body. You just see, like, his head and his shoulders and hands. And I thought that was a really, really nice moment, because he helped Beaver out in like a really simple but genius way, and he didn't punish him, and he didn't treat him like he's a criminal, and I thought that was really good problem solving. Next up is the hypnotist. This is a fun, funny episode where Eddie pretends like he's Beaver's slave, and it is pretty funny. I mean, Beaver and Eddie, you really can't go wrong. If an episode has Eddie in it, I will watch it. Like, it's that simple. He was that good of an actor. He was that good of a character. And eventually Eddie gets... I think that the big disappointing thing of this episode is that how the situation gets resolved. So Beaver basically tells Eddie to walk to his brother. And Wally knows that he's full of shit. And then Eddie knows that he knows, and they have a chase. And Eddie trips over like a muddy yard, and he gets mud all over him, and a sprinkler sprinkles all over him. I thought that was like a really weak ending to this story. In terms of like, really? Like, it just all ends with a little chase, and he trips and falls. Like, that's it? Next up is Blind Date Committee. This is an episode that I have mixed feelings on, because the whole episode, nobody wants to go out with this girl in school to the dance. And Wally is trying to find a date for her, and it's really hard. He cannot find someone who will go with her. And he's like, how bad is this girl that, nobody wants to go with her to this dance? And, you really kind of feel like, this is kind of a negative episode. And then Wally volunteers to go with her. And the really shitty thing is just like, I don't know, like I got really negative feelings from this episode, because Beaver and Larry, I think, they go over to this girl's house just to look at her, because Wally wants to know if she's attractive or not. And it is pretty funny, but it's really mean at the same time, because they go over there and they look at her, and they open the door, or she opens the door, and it's like God, these kids are a bunch of shitheads. And she is not bad at all. I mean, like, I really don't understand. Like, they treated her like she was terrible, and I really didn't like that. And then Beaver pretends like she's not pretty, and then Wally makes this big deal about not wanting to go, and it's just so, like, negative. Like, this piece of shit Wally, he's on the blind date committee. He couldn't find her a date, so he volunteers to go with her. And then he thinks that he's going to get out of doing that. Like, God, what a jackass. So then he goes with her reluctantly, but his dad teaches him a trick that he can pay the other kids who are his friends to dance with her. And I thought, like, ugh. Like, God, what a bunch of scumbags these guys are. Like, and then and it's like, you see her, and it's like, what was the problem that these kids have with her? And then they have this whole scene at the end where it turns out Wally actually did pay a bunch of his friends to dance with her. And I was just like, God, this is ugh. And I really agreed with this one guy on IMDb who said that she was the best part of the episode, because she was. I thought that she was very good, and I was kind of hoping after this episode that she would be in more, because she was very likable, and I didn't see anything wrong. Next up is Beaver's Bike. This is just a classic episode where Beaver gets a new bike, and then these thieves steal the bike and go off. And it's another episode where they kind of show Beaver some mercy. And it's pretty good. I mean, it's a solid classic episode. It's obviously one of the inspirations for the movie. What I really liked about it, though, was Ward's speech. Because Ward said, even though these thieves didn't get caught, they're going to live every day in fear that they are going to get caught. And they're going to have to live every day with the guilty conscience of taking your bike and doing this bad thing. And I thought, that was a really good speech he gave. And then Beaver and Andy, this is an episode like a lot of people call like a masterpiece. I'm not really on that level with it. It's all about how this alcoholic friend of Ward's, he comes to paint the house. Beaver is the only one home, and he has Beaver give him a drink even though he's supposed to be in recovery. And it is a pretty touching episode. I mean, the actor who plays Andy, he does a very good job, but it's just kind of meh. Borrowed Boat. This episode is pretty good. The boys, they get pushed onto this boat by these kids who stole it. The thing that I loved about the episode, though, was that Wally wanted Beaver to go to his football game, but Beaver did not want to go. He because he promised Larry that he would go on a picnic with him. And what I loved about it was that Wally was very mad at him, but then later on in the episode, when Beaver and his friend are at a police station, Wally actually comes to help Beaver, and he identifies the two boys who stole the boat. And I really like that even though Wally was mad at his brother, that he still did the right thing and helped him. Beaver's Dance. This is another classic episode where the boys skip the dancing class to just sit around and dick around, eat bologna. I mean, some of the stuff that they do in episodes, it's like, you'd think that they could have come up with something much more fun. Like, because they're really mad that they're being forced to go to these dance classes with girls. And I don't blame them. Like, it's really queer. It's like they gotta wear suits, and they gotta pretend like they're gentlemen, and they gotta dance with girls and stuff. And it's like, why should they have to do that? So they skip one dance class, and they literally just sit around and eat bologna and bread all day. And then there's this girl who comes over, and she's got a horse, and she lets them have fun and ride the horse with her all day. And I thought, like, one thing that's never addressed in this episode is that even though they got out of doing the dance class, which, quote unquote, was a very sneaky, sinister thing they did, which I don't really think so. Even though they did skip out on the dance club, the fact that they still hung out with a girl all day and rode a horse with her, it kind of tells you something. Like, if they were really bad, like, why would they want to do that all day? Like, they still hung out with a girl all day. They rode horses with her. I mean, I don't think that that's bad at all. I think if anything, that girl should have been made another character on the show, and that we could have gone back to that whole dynamic that they had. So that was kind of stupid. June's birthday. This is one where Beaver gets his mom a terrible shirt for her birthday, and it's a shirt where it looks like a really cheap shirt where it says like "I love France" and it has the Eiffel Tower, and it looks very, very cheap and tacky. And the mom really doesn't want to wear it because she has this woman's club meeting at her house, but she ends up wearing it, and then she ends up taking it off and switching. And then the funniest part is that Beaver and his whole class have to come over to the woman's club meeting to sing songs for them. And it was the funniest thing ever when Beaver sees his mom and she's not wearing this shirt. And it's just so hilarious. Like, he looks like he's horrified, and like he's never been more horrified in his life. And then Larry hides out. This is a fantastic episode because it really exposes how evil and awful Larry's home situation is. As a kid, I really hated Larry, but now as an adult, I kind of understand him more, and I kind of like him more. He has horribly abusive parents who just don't care about him at all. And there's a really funny part where he's looking through his sister's diary with Beaver, but it's awful because, like, his mother has no shame, and she, like, berates him in front of his best friend, and it's really kind of, like, uncomfortable. So Larry runs away, and there's this whole comedy with that. I didn't like how Beaver and Wally got treated for hiding Larry, because I really do think that there should have been some looking into getting him away from his parents, because they're not good people. And then teacher comes to dinner. This is another classic episode. I mean, I don't even need to talk about this one, really. The concept is simple but genius, where Beaver's teacher comes over to have dinner at their house. Things go wrong, and it's a classic, fun episode. Beaver's monkey. This one is another classic, hilarious episode where Beaver gets a pet monkey, and it gets really, really sad at one point because you think that the monkey is going to die from pneumonia. And I was surprised at how much I love this episode, because then at the end, Beaver is so, he cares about the monkey so much that he has already done the courtesy of, like, calling to see if they can put the monkey back in its natural habitat so that it doesn't get sick and die. And so I thought that was great. School sweater. This was an epic 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5 episode where Wally has basically become this girl's bitch, and she has his school sweater, his Letterman jacket or whatever, and she refuses to give it back to him. Like, every time she just makes a new excuse, and it's so great that, like, Ward just tells Wally the truth, and he tells him, you gotta go stand up for yourself, get your sweater back. This is absolutely embarrassing, what we're seeing here, with how they're talking about you at the soda shop. And so I thought that was a really good episode. Wally's orchid. This is another one about Wally and a girl having girl problems. I thought that this was a very interesting episode because the most popular girl in school wants to go with him to the dance, but she requires an orchid crochet. She requires an orchid flower to wear on her dress, and Wally has to go through all this trouble to get it. And of course, Ward thinks that it's unreasonable because it costs more money. And yeah, I would kind of agree. especially in this situation where it's just some random school dance. Like, it's not prom or anything, it's just a random dance. But what I really liked was that he goes through all this trouble for nothing. Like, by the end of the episode, it's like, nah, she doesn't really like him at all. She doesn't care about him, and they don't even have a really good time, and it was all for nothing. And I really liked that message, and I really liked how, Ward said, sometime you can go through all this trouble, and it's not going to amount to anything. Wally's test is the next episode, which there's still a handful of episodes left to talk about. You guys see what happens when you quote unquote overstay your welcome with TV episodes? You have a lot of great episodes to talk about, and even though it's taking an hour, I don't really care. I really love the show. But in Wally's test, Eddie and Lumpy, they have a plan to cheat using the school napkins in the bathroom. And then they think that Wally somehow used them to cheat during the test. And then the teacher figures it out, and there's this whole thing with that. And what I really liked was this was another episode where you think that Wally is going to get in trouble and that it's going to be this negative episode that's trash. But instead, the teacher knows that it's Eddie and Lumpy, and I really like that a lot. I love how this episode concludes. I thought that it was really good. Larry's Club. This is another episode that talks about Larry and his character, and I really love this episode a lot. There's not really much to say about it, though. I mean, you guys could probably look it up. Beaver finds a wallet. This one was a great episode because Beaver does the right thing once again over and over. And he turns in this wallet that he found to the police. He puts out a newspaper ad. There's some comedy with that. But what I really loved was that then he goes to the police station and he meets this woman who reveals to him that it was her wallet that he turned in. And it's really sad because you can see his heartbreak, but at the same time, he still does the right thing, and he says, it's yours, whatever, I don't care. And what I really love, though, is when she promises that she's going to send him a gift, and he's going to get a reward for doing the right thing, and she never sends him a gift. And so Ward has to buy a fake gift for his son. And then the best part is the ending, because Beaver says, I wrote a thank you letter for this gift. And Ward sends this fake thank you letter to this woman who never sent Beaver a present to begin with. And I just thought, you know what? Ward is one of the greatest characters in TV history. He has so many epic moments like this. I thought, wow, what a savage fucking choice. So the next one is Beaver's Prize. This is one where I used to think that it was bad, but now I really, really like it because Beaver and Larry sneak out to go to the movies, and then he wins a bicycle. And there's a lot of comedy with that, and Wally getting him back home so he doesn't get in trouble. But the greatest thing is that his parents find out about the bicycle, and they think that they're going to punish him. They're going to have to, be really mean to him, and he's done something terrible. And what's great is that Beaver surprises them, and he gives the bike back. He does all the right things, And then he comes home and admits his mistakes. And it's so funny because, like, Ward and the mom were, like, waiting for him to come home. As if, like, ooh, now we get to punish him. And we're going to get our rocks off on punishing him. And he surprises them because he's such a good child. And then Beaver's Tree, I don't want to talk about this episode, but if you look it up, you can probably figure out why I would rank it this high, and I don't want to talk about it anymore. Next up is Wally the Businessman. This is a great episode where it's all about Wally selling ice cream bars, and people take advantage of him and they don't pay for their ice cream bars. And it's just a great, classic, funny, fun episode. I mean, there's not really much else to say about it. Not really much to talk about, but it's a great episode. Next up is Beaver Makes a Loan. This episode is all about how Beaver loans Larry some money, and Larry does not pay him back. And it's a really, really good episode because it's like Larry is finally held accountable by Beaver. I mean, Beaver is always taking shit from Larry, and he's always doing bad things, getting punished because of Larry. And this was the time where it was like Larry took it too far. And I just really love this episode. And then Beaver the Magician. This is the first episode that I watched of this season. Like, I immediately jumped to watching this episode because it was the first one that I thought of. And in it, Beaver and Larry trick this little kid into thinking that Beaver turns himself into a rock. And so it's really funny because then Beaver leaves for the weekend, and this little kid thinks that Beaver's the rock and he's taking care of it. And it's really, really funny. And it's great because, you know, Beaver's hardly in the episode. It's all about this, like, random kid and the rock. And it's really good. But the best episode of Season 3 is the Spot Removers. So this is all about Wally has this Letterman's jacket, and Beaver spills oil on it of some kind, and it's awful because the oil is not coming out, and it's stained the jacket, and it's a really, really bad situation. And what I loved about it was the whole episode, Beaver is trying all these ways to get the oil spots out of the jacket. And nothing works, and you can just see the fear in his eyes, and you can see that, you know, he really wants to fix this problem. He didn't mean to do it. And by the end, the greatest part is that Eddie also makes character development. So what I really love about Season 3 is that Larry makes character development. He's no longer the worst person on the show. Violet Rutherford makes development. Eddie makes character development. So I really like this season and how it advanced the characters forward, unlike other shows. And Eddie sees that Beaver is in this bad situation, and Eddie actually helps him out and tells Wally, you know what, let's not wear any jackets to the party. And so it was such a great, satisfying, feel-good moment that Eddie helped Beaver, and that he saw that Beaver was in this kind of trouble, and he really felt bad for him. And so I really, really liked that. That was the best part of the whole season. And as soon as I finished the episode, I was like, yeah, that's an A+ episode right there. So overall, I don't really know what I would rate Leave It to Beaver Season 3 in terms of food. It's kind of different because it's a sitcom. I mean, I know that that's going to sound antithetical to, my typical reviewing, which is I review everything in terms of food. But it's hard in terms of like this season really advanced things forward, and I can't really think of a food that advances anything forward right now. So I'll just leave it at that. I really love season 3 of Leave It to Beaver. I would highly recommend it. Even the bad episodes, I would recommend watching because there's funny moments even in the bad episodes. So anyways, please like this video and comment and tell me what you thought of Leave It to Beaver Season 3. I really love the show, and I'm glad that I am talking about it finally. And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest reviews on Leave It to Beaver.